Life kind of divides itself into a couple of different categories: unscheduled events and scheduled events. Now, there are a lot of other ways that life divvies itself up, but a scheduled event is something like a Zoom meeting or a wedding or a dinner party. Unscheduled events, things like CPR, car trouble, a mouse, or clothes on fire. And the difference in there, and it depends on what it is, nobody ever schedules when CPR is going to happen. But when CPR is required, it's time to do it right away. It's not the sort of thing that you want to wait. And it's not, I'm going to get to that later. I'm going to put that on my to-do list. It's one of those immediate sorts of things. Same thing, when the clothes are on fire, the instructions are to stop, drop, and roll. And the title of the talk today is Stop, Drop, and Pray. And it's that same idea, but it's taken into the creative and spiritual nature of our world. Because when something happens, when we're prepared to do so, we can turn our attention to spirit. We can look away from the circumstance, the situation, whatever it is that's going on, and understand that behind that there is a spiritual truth, and go to prayer and invite something different. Now, in a circumstance where CPR is required, we'd like to start doing the CPR either before the prayer or at the same time, because we don't want to wait on the CPR. But we also don't want to wait on the prayer. Because as we've heard in our prayer work stories today, the change happens and can start happening almost instantaneously. So the idea of stop, drop, and pray is not to say, oh, you should do that. And in fact, when when people are taught, the clothing thing of stop, drop, and roll, nobody ever practices. That's not the sort of thing where you say, okay, let me go ahead and give that a try. Let me set my clothes on fire and see how quickly I can put them out. That's not a good idea. However, what we can do with our prayer work is to increase our awareness of our connection with spirit and work on that spiritual muscle so that we can more easily get into that prayer space. I've talked some about foxhole prayers, which is where, the bullets are flying and we dive into a foxhole and say, oh, please, God, help me with this, that, or the other thing. If the only time that we're doing our prayer is when there's an emergency, then we're not going to be fine-tuning our technique. We're not going to be learning how to do that. With CPR, there's a class that you take so that you know CPR, and then there's the recertification and practice and things like that. Joe's not here today, but she, she's one of those people who says, oh yeah, I had to give a guy CPR today, because it's part of her world, and she does that, and she knows how to do that, and she's ready to do that, and she's fluent in that. And in the work that she's doing as in her field of nursing, it sometimes is important. But having that familiarity and that skill set and that ability to stop, drop, and let go of everything else so we can go into that that service, that activity, whether it's prayer or CPR or rolling around on the ground to get the embers turned off. Don't wait. Don't wait. So cultivate that ability to take whatever it is that's going on into prayer. And we heard some wonderful prayer work stories today about how it works and how we can overdo it. And there are some details about that. I got a text message from a minister friend yesterday, and it was a very short text message. Said, tested positive for COVID, mostly sleeping and shivering. And I texted back, prayers are underway. And I had to understand where I was starting in consciousness with that, because in my belief system, I understand that COVID is a thing. I understand there's the possibility of exposure to the virus. I understand how the testing works. I understand how the symptoms work. I understand the progression of the disease. I understand this particular minister's situation with vaccinations and overall health and so forth. So, given that story, tested positive for COVID, mostly sleeping and shivering, my belief system said, this is an individual who has COVID. So I'm not going to do a prayer for the test to come back negative. I'm not going to do a prayer to say there's no such thing as COVID, because I know what I believe. I know where I'm starting. And, mostly sleeping and shivering. Well, that has been the experience up until now, so I'm not going to be able to change what has happened so far. What I do get to do is put my attention on making that an up until now. My awareness that the current state of symptoms and experience and discomfort with this particular malady has already hit its peak. It's just getting better from here. So it's even now in the process of resolving itself as my friend is returning to health and harmony and equilibrium and balance, and all of the things that are symptoms of COVID are receding. And it does so as quickly as we've ever heard of it happening, and even better. That's the intention that I set. And that fits into my belief system. I know that diseases that show up and that are right in our faces and horrible, oh my God, how could this possibly be, can vanish just as quickly. And that's a lot of what Ernest Holmes talks about in all of his writings, is that transformation is at hand. That stuff is available. And it's really good to be practiced, to not try and do one of those first time out when there's an emergency, when somebody's heading into the emergency room. I mean, we can, but, a little bit of practice is good. And that's a great reason to do some prayer, to get yourself involved with a practitioner, especially now that we have practitioner interns who are doing sessions for free. Get involved in the process and dive in a little bit so that you're more familiar with it when the time comes, that you can call on somebody, you can call on spirit to create something new in your life. Because you can do that. You can do that. Take a class. Get yourself steeped in this. Do you have to become a professional practitioner? No. Every time we teach a class, we're doing something else that's involved in prayer and cultivating that ability to turn our attention away from the circumstance that's been up until now and invite in something new. Because we know that there is one creative power that creates everything, including each of us, and that we're using it all the time. Now, there's something that exists that you may or may not be aware of. On the New Thought Philadelphia website, on the Ministries menu, there's a little prayer request. And you can actually go to that last little tab on the Ministries menu. It's a prayer request form, and you get to fill in the form. And there are a few fields in there that are required, and there are some optional ones. Like, you don't have to put in your last name, you don't have to put in a phone number. We like to get an email address so that we can contact the people who have put in a prayer request. And we get those every once in a while. And sometimes they're very simple from people who we know, and sometimes they are completely cryptic from people who we don't. And as I was preparing for the talk today, a prayer request came in. It's time-stamped at 4 o'clock this morning. So, whatever that means. And it's somebody who I do not know. But I'm going to read the prayer request, and I feel comfortable being able to do that because we don't know who this person is. We can talk about the prayer request itself. And as I start, please bear with me, because this is not going to start where most of the prayer requests in a New Thought community start. Here's the prayer request. Jesus, you said if 2 or more agree in your name, you will answer. Please, whoever reads this prayer request, agree with me in Christ's name that this prayer comes true. This is not our language. However, I can kind of see where this is going. Continues, my life has been one of supernatural blocks, stagnation, loneliness, failure, broken dreams for decades. I'm 57 with no friends, no wife, no job, money low, no house of my own, rent just got raised, bad eyes, teeth, back, and zero energy. Sickly and exhausted. I can't do anything fruitful in this condition. Oh, whoa. That is a sad story. It continues. I ask God to remove all curses, blocks, and replace it with His favor, blessings, and success. Well, okay, if the choice is for God to give you curses, blocks, and so forth, and the other choice is favor, blessings, and success, that's where I'm going to go. Still think we're not throwing this one exactly over the plate. I am praying for financial freedom, independence, and better health, and that I find true love as well as God's wisdom, and ask God to please hurry. Really? We're rushing the infinite here? Okay, but yes, as long as we're ordering, let's pile it on. I fear if this is put off any longer, I might go insane and will break. Oh, well, maybe that's a little ultimatum for Spirit. If you don't do this now, then I'm going to break. Okay. Ask God to hurry. I'm 3/4 through the average lifespan and not much time left. It's been a hellacious life. Restore the years the locusts have eaten. Wow. Now, what we like to do when we're talking about a prayer is identify the experience of life that we want to be having. And you can kind of, in there, read between the lines about the sorts of things that are going on. First of all, in the experience of this, I'm presuming, gentleman, because he's looking for a wife. And also what the background is, because we're asking, please, Jesus, God, outside of me, someplace, do me a favor, and please hurry and rescue me. And that's different than the way that we in New Thought think of the creative power in the universe. We think that that one creative power that creates everything has created each of us, and that we're using that same power to create our lives. So we're not looking for somebody outside of us, for God or Jesus or an external force to please do us a favor and help us out whether we deserve it or not. What we're doing in our prayers instead is stepping into our power, claiming our truth, and accepting our goodness. And I will now, I'm talking about supernatural blocks. Okay, well, if we're talking about God, God wouldn't have any supernatural blocks. Supernatural means something I don't understand. So we'll skip that one. One of the wonderful things about our prayer request form on the website is that in addition to the prayer request, we have another field which is required, which is the desired result. The desired result is relief, wellness, energy, a feeling of being loved, happy, financially secure. Bam! Drop the mic. In the prayer request form, this person has done the pivot for us. That's what we're looking for. The desired result, without the need for that whole story, which we sometimes call the purpose statement, step 0. You can complain about what's going on. You can talk about how sad the story has been. And then when we get into the prayer, it's like, okay, what do I want to have instead? Yes, that's been the story up until now, and it's all very real. That's the COVID diagnosis. That's the need for CPR. What do we want to do next? What do we want to do next? What we want is relief, wellness, energy, a feeling of being loved, happy, and financially secure. So when I take that into prayer, the first step in the prayer is to turn to the infinite, that divine power and presence that creates everything. The aspects of God, in my mind, that apply to the prayer that we're going to do are love and harmony, peace, abundance, joy, and wholeness. And I would then turn that, and in fact have, into an affirmation that goes into that practical prayer. And I'm going to read that for you in a second, but what I'd like you to do is start thinking about that which you would like to invite into your life, and the way that you're going to invite the infinite to create that for you. Because we heard some prayer work stories about, I live in the desert and I would like it to rain more, and the prayer is for rain, and then there's way more rain than we wanted. So when I pray for some experience in weather, I don't pray for what the weather is going to be like. I pray for the experience I'm going to have while the weather is doing its perfect thing. The weather is perfect for the circumstance and the situation. And I let go of my attachment to what my specific experience is going to be. And I do have experience where I've been sitting at the ballpark in a drizzling rain and then realized after 25 or 30 minutes that I could do a prayer about this, and then the rain didn't stop. It just went someplace else. And created lovely rainbows and a wonderful end to the ball game for me. So it's all about fit. It's about those pieces being able to fit together. So the affirmation of the realization step that I would put into this prayer is, this person is love itself, expressed and revealed in a unique and powerful way. Transformation is at hand as he turns from the challenging experiences of the past to the new possibilities that are at hand now. The health and vitality that are his birthright are coming back into his daily experience of life. The perfect loving relationship is on its way now, with his partner already looking for him. Prosperity is blossoming with the delightful experience of living in plenty. He is guided by that divine mind that knows all to his next perfect steps and is inspired to take them. That is a huge step from, Jesus, you said that if 2 or more agree with me, and my life is hellacious, and remove the curses and blocks and supernatural things that have been going on. And that same possibility is available for each of us, individually and for all of us together, because that infinite creative power that creates everything is always saying yes. So we don't have to make the law work. We don't have to convince it to do what we want. We just need to acknowledge that that's already going on and set the intention, the invitation, the openness, the knowing of after we get done with this current experience and we pivot, what's that next thing that's happening for us? Claim that. Let that loose into the creative law and let that create something fabulous for us. So do that. Do that today. Do that continuously. Do that on your own. Do that with a practitioner. Just do it, because you deserve all the good. So it is.